I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. Emily and I had been together for almost 10 years. We met in college, had what I thought was a solid, loving marriage, or at least I always thought so. She was the kind of woman who could charm the pants off anyone, smart, witty, gorgeous, and she knew it. She had this way of making everyone feel like they mattered, especially me. I was the strong, dependable guy who worked hard, provided for us, and thought that was enough. But everything changed last month, right around the time of my dad's funeral. That was supposed to be a somber, reflective time for me, a moment to honor my father, remember the good times, and process the grief. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. Emily was acting strange, like really odd. She'd get these quick, nervous glances that I brushed off at first. But then I noticed her phone constantly buzzing, her sneaking off to the bathroom for long periods, and her getting more defensive whenever I asked about her day. I remember one night, after the funeral, I was cleaning out my dad's garage. I found her phone lying on the bed, something I'd never usually do because I trusted her, but that day I was just curious. I picked it up and I saw a message notification. It was from someone named Ryan. The message was short, but it hit me like a punch in the gut. "Can't wait to see you tonight, miss you." My stomach dropped. I stared at it, confused, hurt, and angry all at once. I knew deep down something was wrong, but I didn't want to believe it. That's when I started paying closer attention. Emily's behavior, her lies about where she was going or who she was talking to, it all felt like a thin veneer of normalcy hiding something ugly underneath. She would come home late, smell like perfume I didn't recognize, and her phone was never far away. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just stressed out with everything happening, but the feeling kept gnawing at me. Something about her was different, colder, more detached. I felt like I was losing her even as she was standing right in front of me. The worst part is, I didn't want to believe it, because if she was cheating, what did that say about everything? Were we ever truly happy? Did I waste years on someone who never really loved me? Or was this just some fleeting affair that she'd keep hidden? I wasn't ready to face the truth, but I knew I had to. I started digging through her social media, her messages, anything I could find that would tell me what was really going on. And what I found, well, it shattered anything left of my trust. So, after I found that message from Ryan, I couldn't just brush it off. I needed to know if there were more. I started going through her phone secretly, scrolling through every text, every photo, and every app she had. It was like peeling back layers of a lie she'd been telling herself and everyone else around her. And what I found was worse than I expected. There were dozens of messages, flirty, suggestive, downright explicit, between her and Ryan. Photos, too, mostly just quick snapshots of her in bed, half-dressed, or texting in bed with her phone propped up next to her. I couldn't believe I missed all the signs, how blind I'd been. But what really broke me was the photos. I found a whole album of her and Ryan, taken during the days I thought she was out shopping or visiting her sister. They were intimate, smiling while they kissed, her lying on his chest, her hands running over his body. It was all right there in plain sight. I stared at those images for what felt like hours, feeling every bit of my trust evaporate. How could she lie to my face every day and act like everything was fine? I'd never felt so numb. I stayed up that night just staring at her phone screen, trying to process what I'd uncovered. My mind was racing, anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I wanted to confront her, but I didn't know how. Part of me just wanted to pack my bags and leave, but then I remembered the funeral, my dad's face, the man who always told me to keep my dignity. I knew I couldn't just walk away without some kind of reckoning. I had to confront her. The next day, I waited until she came home from work. I knew she'd be lying about where she'd been, so I was prepared. When she got in, I didn't waste any time. I showed her the photos. Her face went pale, then she started to lie. Oh, she was just talking to Ryan, that it was nothing, just innocent flirting. She denied being unfaithful, denied the photos, even though I had them right there on my phone. Her words were like poison. I could see the venom behind her lies, like she was trying to convince herself just as much as she was trying to convince me. I felt a storm of emotions, anger, sadness, disgust, but mostly I felt betrayed. Not just by her, but by the way she thought she could lie so easily, hide her affair like it was some kind of game. I was horrified at how she dismissed everything, how she said I was overreacting, that she owed me no explanations. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I told her I knew everything, that I saw her with Ryan, that I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Her reaction, she snapped, told me I was overreacting, that I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat on me. Said I was just jealous and insecure. That moment was like a punch to the gut, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I saw her for what she was, a liar, a user, someone who had no respect for me or our marriage. I didn't cry, I just stood there trying to hold it together. I knew this wasn't just a slip-up or a mistake. It was a betrayal of everything we had built. The next steps were clear in my mind. I had to decide whether I was going to forgive her and try to fix this or walk away for good. But I knew one thing, I'd never see her the same way again. That confrontation left me shaken, but it also pushed me to do something I never thought I'd have to consider, seriously think about ending everything. I went to bed that night, mind racing, and I kept replaying her words and her face, trying to find some kind of justification or reason she might have had. But there was nothing. Just that cold, dismissive look when she told me I was overreacting, like I was the problem, not her. I'd always believed in honesty, trust, loyalty, values I thought were the foundation of marriage. Now I was questioning if I'd ever really had any of it. Hardest part was the silence afterward. I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about all the moments we shared, the trips, the holidays, the quiet mornings. Were they all a lie? Was I just some fool who thought he was loved? I kept asking myself if I ever truly mattered to her, or if I was just a placeholder for her convenience. It cut deep, knowing I was in a marriage where the woman I loved was lying and cheating behind my back. And the pain wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the realization that maybe I'd been blind all along. The next morning was miserable. I woke up feeling hollow, numb. I decided I had to do something drastic. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay, not with all the evidence in my hands. I started planning my next moves. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt, but also oddly determined. I wanted to know the full extent of her lies, get everything out in the open, and then decide what I'd do. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again or pretend like she was innocent. She needed to face the truth, just like I was starting to do. I began by looking at her phone again, going through her messages more carefully this time. I found more evidence, messages from Ryan, pictures of them together, and even some of her whispering to him on the sly. It wasn't just a fling. It was a secret life she'd been hiding from me for months. I felt my stomach turn every time I saw it. I'd always tried to be a good husband, patient, understanding, forgiving even when she lied or snapped at me. But now, I was done. There was no coming back from this level of betrayal. I realized I needed to confront her again, but this time I was prepared to do whatever it took to get the truth out and protect myself. I waited until she left for work, then I started collecting all the evidence I'd found. I took screenshots, saved her messages, printed out some of the photos. I needed a clear record. I needed to be ready for what was coming next. I knew she'd deny everything again, call me crazy, say I was jealous, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I was tired of feeling like I was the only one fighting for this marriage. If she wanted to keep lying and sneaking around, then I'd be the one to finally put an end to it. I was done being a sucker. I was ready to face her and get some answers, no matter what those answers would be. When Emily walked out the door that morning, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally had the evidence I needed, and dread because I knew what I was about to do would change everything. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the phone in my hand, trembling slightly. I had to get this over with. I couldn't let her keep lying, keep pretending everything was fine. The truth had to come out, even if it shattered whatever was left of our marriage. I dialed her number. I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around anymore. When she answered, I kept my voice steady but cold. I told her I knew everything, that I'd seen the messages, the photos, and I didn't believe her lies anymore. Her reaction was typical, defensive, angry, dismissive. She denied everything again, called me paranoid, said I was just jealous or insecure. She accused me of spying, of ruining what we had, but I didn't care anymore. I laid out the evidence on the table, told her I wasn't going to play her game anymore. Her voice cracked when I confronted her. She tried to lie, to say it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything, just two people who got carried away. She said she loved me, that it was a mistake, that she'd stop if I just forgave her. I wanted to laugh, but I was too furious. She was so good at lying, so good at making herself the victim, but I knew better now. I looked at her through the phone and saw her for what she was, a woman who had no respect for her vows, no respect for me, no respect for what we had. I told her I couldn't do this anymore. I told her I was done, that I wanted her out of the house. She started crying, begging, telling me I was overreacting, that I was making a huge mistake. I felt nothing but a cold emptiness. I knew then that I couldn't stay in this marriage, at least. Not like this. I had to protect myself emotionally, physically. I had to step away from the lies, the betrayal, the pain. I told her to pack her things and leave that day. She argued, of course, made more excuses, said she'd change, but I wasn't buying it. I knew she was lying again, just trying to buy time. After she left, I sat alone in the house, staring at the empty space where she'd been. I felt a deep ache inside, like I'd lost part of myself. But strangely, I also felt some kind of relief. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without lying to myself. I could start facing the truth. I realized I'd been holding on to a fantasy that wasn't real. She never loved me the way I thought she did. All those years, I was the one who cared, who tried to keep everything together. And she was just pretending. That day was the beginning of a long road ahead. I didn't immediately know what to do, but I knew I had to rebuild myself. I had to learn to trust again, learn to heal from this betrayal. I also knew I'd never look at her the same way. That's the harsh truth. The woman I married, the woman I thought was my partner, had been hiding a secret life. And now I had to figure out if I ever truly loved her, or if I was just too scared to admit I was alone. The days that followed were a blur of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and a strange sense of relief. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how I'd missed all the signs or how I'd been so blind. Honestly, part of me kept asking if I ever really knew her at all. Did she ever truly love me, or was I just someone she settled for? The thought haunted me, but I also knew I had to focus on moving forward. I started to pick up the pieces of my life, piece by piece. It wasn't easy. The house felt emptier than ever, and the silence was deafening. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, but now I wondered if those were just illusions. I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd betrayed me in the worst way, but I refused to let this define me. I knew I had to get out of this dark place, so I started doing things I'd neglected: going to the gym, reconnecting with friends, even therapy, to process everything. I wanted to understand my feelings, to make sense of the chaos inside. Meanwhile, Emily kept texting me, trying to manipulate the situation. She was still trying to deny everything, calling me crazy or insecure. She'd send long, tearful messages about how much she loved me, how she'd changed, and how sorry she was for everything. But I saw through the lies. There was no remorse, only guilt trying to cover up her actions. I blocked her number after a while. I couldn't hear her words anymore. I knew I had to cut ties, at least for now, until I was strong enough to face whatever was next. The hardest part was the aftermath, the questions that kept swirling in my mind. Had I ever really loved her? Was I just afraid of being alone? Did she ever truly love me back? The betrayal cut so deep that I doubted almost everything. But as time went on, I started to realize something important. I deserved better. I deserved someone who wouldn't cheat, someone who would be honest and loyal. That realization gave me a fragile hope, hope that I could rebuild trust and maybe someday find happiness again. I also took time to reflect on what I'd learned. If there's anything this mess has taught me, it's that honesty isn't just about telling the truth. It's about respect, about valuing your partner enough to be faithful. Emily's actions showed me she didn't value what we had, and honestly, that was a hard pill to swallow. But I also learned that I have to put myself first sometimes, even if it means walking away from everything I thought was real. Because if you stay in a lie, you're just living someone else's fantasy, not your own. Now I'm slowly moving forward. Not perfect, not fully healed, but better than I was. I still get angry sometimes, still wonder if I'll ever really trust again. But I know I have to keep going. The pain will fade, and someday I believe I'll find someone who genuinely loves me for who I am, someone who won't hide secrets or cheat behind my back. That's the lesson I want to share. Don't settle for less than what you deserve. Because in the end, loyalty and honesty are everything, and if they're missing, it's better to walk away. Looking back now, I realize that the betrayal changed me more than I expected. I used to believe in happily ever after, in the kind of love that conquers all. But that illusion was shattered in the most brutal way. I've learned that trust isn't something you can take for granted, and that sometimes you only find out who someone really is when they've shown you their worst side. For a while, I wondered if I'd ever love again, if I'd ever be able to truly open up without fear of getting hurt again. But time, as grim as it was, helped. I started to rebuild my sense of self piece by piece. I learned to forgive not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiveness isn't about excusing what she did. It's about releasing that heavy weight I carried around. I accepted that I had been blind, but I also realized I wasn't to blame. People make choices, and her choices were hers. I couldn't control her actions, only how I responded to them. What truly saved me was the understanding that I deserved better. I don't want to be with someone who lies and cheats. I want honesty, respect, and loyalty. And I know now that I can survive alone if I have to. The pain still lingers, but it's not as sharp anymore. It's more like a scar, something that reminds me of what I went through but doesn't define me. If I could give anyone advice, especially anyone dealing with betrayal, it's this: don't stay in something that doesn't serve your happiness or peace. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But you can rebuild yourself. You can learn to love again, starting with yourself. Because in the end, the only relationship that truly matters is the one you have with your own worth. And if someone isn't willing to honor that, then they're not worth your time or tears. I may never fully forget what happened, but I've moved past the worst of it. I've learned that life goes on, and sometimes losing the wrong person is the best thing that can happen, because it clears the way for the right one. And I'm finally ready to see what the future holds, without the weight of betrayal holding me back.